Hi, and welcome to this Circle of Fifths quiz. Now, if you don't know what the Circle of Fifths is, you perhaps need to look at one of our other free videos out there on YouTube, which explains the whole thing and what it's all about. But I think the Circle of Fifths is wonderful because it really is literally the key to the whole musical system when it comes to talking about keys. So, quick reminder on what the Circle of Fifths is about, and then we're going to have a little quiz. So, if you want to know more about the detailed construction, have a look at the other video first. But let me quickly run through it. 3 circles on the board, and I'm not the best artist in the world, so if it's not quite circles, please forgive me. More sort of ovalish really, isn't it? But there we are. And we start with major keys in this middle ring. So those that are put in black are the major keys. The minor keys that relate to those major keys are in the inner circle, and I've put those in green in brackets. Don't worry about the brackets or the colours, it's just one way of doing it, just to make sure you don't get the circles muddled up. And in the outer circle, in the red, we're given the key signatures for each of these keys. So in other words, if I'm in C major, I've got no sharps, no flats. If I'm in G major, I need F sharp. If I'm in D major, I need F sharp and C sharp, and so on. And these things here are called the relative minors because, for example, E minor is related to G major, or F minor is related to A flat major. They're related because they share the same key signature. So in other words, A flat major uses B flat, E flat, A flat and D flat in the key signature, but so does F minor. So that's just a quick recap on how the Circle of Fifths works. And to construct it and know all the ins and outs, as I say, it's on the other video that we've got out there, which is just about explaining the Circle of Fifths, how to construct it, what it all does. But this is a quiz that you might find it rather fun to do, just to see if you've really grasped how the Circle of Fifths can help you. So I've got 10 questions and it's 10 points a question, and then you can see what your final percentage result is. Question 1, which major key has 4 sharps? So which major key has 4 sharps in its key signature? You might want to just write these down somewhere for now. Question 2, which minor key has 3 flats? Which minor key has 3 flats? Question 3, which key is the relative minor of A major? Which key is the relative minor of A major? Question 4, which key is the relative major of B flat minor? Which key is the relative major of B flat minor? Question 5, what is the key signature of A flat major in the order in which you would expect to see the key signature written? So in other words, don't just put the flats or the sharps in any old order, put them in the correct order. What is the key signature of A flat major in the order that you'd expect to see it in the key signature? Question 6, why is F sharp minor on the Circle of Fifths, which is over here, why is it F sharp minor and not F minor? You know, that was A minor, E minor, B minor. Why not F minor? Why is it F sharp minor? Question 7, how do you calculate relative minor keys from each major key? How do you calculate relative minor keys from each major key? Question 8. Which degree of the scale, which note of the scale, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on, do we sharpen for each new sharp major key? All right, so when we're constructing this outer circle and we want to put the new sharp for the next key, which degree of the scale, which note of the scale do we sharpen in order to find that new sharp for each major key? Question 9, which degree of the scale do we flatten to find the new flat for each major key? So when we're looking for these flats out here, which degree of the major scale do we flatten to find the new flat for the next major key? Finally, question 10, and then I'll reveal the answers. Question 10, why does the circle of fifths stop at C sharp major and C flat major? Because if you're constructing a circle of fifths, you could carry on in fifths, couldn't you? So why do we stop at C sharp major and C flat major at the bottom there? If you want to rewind that, you could have another go at any questions that caused you to ponder there. When you think you've got the best answers you can provide, well, plug back in and I'm going to reveal the answers to those questions. So remember, it's 10 points for each question. It's a pretty straightforward marking system. If you get it right, you get 10. If you get it wrong, you get 0. So don't think, well, I sort of nearly got it right, so I'll call that 9.5. Basically, it's right or it's wrong in this quiz. Okay, question 1. Which major key has 4 sharps? The answer to that is E major. Here's E major. How do I know it's got 4 sharps? Well, here are the sharps. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the major key that points to is E major. Question 2. Which minor key has 3 flats? So I'm looking at minor keys in the green inner circle now, and we're looking for 3 flats. 1, 2, 3. So the minor key with 3 flats is C minor. Question 3. What is the relative minor of A major? Well, where's A major? Well, the major circle is this middle circle. There's A major. The relative minor key is F sharp minor. Okay, so the relative minor of A major, F sharp minor. Okay, what's the relative major key of B flat minor? So we're now at question 4. Where's B flat minor? Here it is in the green in the inner circle, and the relative major is D flat major. Relative because both of those keys have this key signature: B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. Question 5. What is the key signature of A flat major in the order that you expect to see the key signature? Okay, well, where's A flat major? Here it is. It's in that middle circle in the black, isn't it? And so what's the key signature going to be? B flat, E flat, A flat, and D flat in that order. This is one of the important things. The circle of fifths gives you the order in which to put the key signature. So B flat's always first because it's the first flat we meet. E flat's always second. A flat's always third. D flat's always fourth, and so on. Okay, question 6. Why is F sharp minor and not just F minor? You know, A minor, E minor, B minor, F minor. Why is it F sharp minor? Well, it's partly because in the circle of fifths, we're going up a fifth each time, and we're not going up any old fifth, we're going up a perfect fifth. So if you know about your intervals, you'll know a perfect fifth above B is F sharp. Another much easier way of doing this is as follows. From G major onwards, we said that F is sharp. So it's not just G major, it's all the keys from that point onwards. If they have an F in them, the F will be F sharp. So we can't really have F minor here because here we said that from now on all the Fs are going to be sharp. So it has to be F sharp minor, doesn't it? In the same way that this has to be C sharp minor because we had a C sharp introduced there. So that's why it's F sharp minor and not F minor. Okay, question 7. How do you calculate relative minor keys from each major key? Well, if you look at each major key and then you think, how do I get to the relative minor? What you do is you go down 3. So C, B, A. A minor is the relative minor of C major, and this is true for all of them. To be specific, if you're on the case with your intervals, the relative minor keys are always a minor third below their relative major keys. Okay, question 8. Which degree of the scale do we sharpen for each new sharp major key? So in other words, when we're in G major, which degree do we have to sharpen? Well, it's the 7th degree, because if you're in G major, you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here comes number 7, so I'm going to sharpen it. F sharp, G, and you can hear it sounds right. If I don't sharpen that F, doesn't sound quite right, does it? So I'm sharpening the 7th degree of the scale each time. So when I come to D major, I use the F sharp and I sharpen the 7th degree of D major. So I get D, E, F sharp from here, G, A, B, here's the 7th degree, C sharp, D. So you see how we're dealing with that one. So it's the 7th degree of the scale that we sharpen each time. Question 9 was, which degree of the scale do we flatten for each new flat major key? Well, the answer to that is the 4th degree of the scale. So let's have a look at F major. Here's F, so the notes are F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, but that B sounds a bit funny, doesn't it? So the 4th degree is B, let's call it B flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, there's the B flat, C, D, E, F. And the scale works out perfectly. And of course, in the case of major scales, this is confirming a pattern. Every major scale goes tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So you'll find that if you follow the circle of fifths, it always throws up major keys going tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So F major, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay, and the last question, question 10. Why does the circle of fifths stop at C sharp major and C flat major? Because, you know, if we're going to go down in fifths here, well, we could keep going, couldn't we? You know, because the next key, a perfect fifth below C flat, would be F flat major. Well, why don't we have F flat major? Or if we're going up in fifths here, we could say, well, the next key on the sharp side after C sharp major would be G sharp major. Well, the simple answer to that is that once we've got to C sharp major, everything is sharp. All right? Every degree of the scale is sharp. We've got 7 sharps. C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. So if we go beyond that, we then get into a world of double sharps. Perfectly possible to do, but actually it's sort of sensible when you're choosing a key to try and keep inside the circle of fifths, so you don't end up with a situation where you would have to have double sharps in your key signature. That would be a bit crazy, wouldn't it? And you sort of think, well, actually, you know, if I wanted to write something in G sharp major, it would be an awful lot easier to write it in A flat major, wouldn't it? Because in A flat major, it goes A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat. But in G sharp major, you're getting into G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F double sharp, G sharp, and you'd have to have all that in your key signature. So that's a bit of a nightmare, and that's why we don't go beyond C sharp major. The same is true on the flat side, that C flat uses every single flat. So C flat major is C flat, D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat. So again, if I went on, I'd end up with a sort of double flat scenario before I knew it. So that's the logic of why it finishes there. And interestingly, we start with C at the top, no sharps, no flats, C sharp at the bottom with everything sharp, C flat at the bottom with everything flat. Well, how did you get on with the Circle of Fifths quiz? If you managed to get 100% on that, congratulations. If you managed to get less than that, well, don't let it worry you, but it might just flag up areas of Circle of Fifths knowledge that would be worth acquiring. And I can't emphasize how important the Circle of Fifths is really to any musician. If you really want to know your way around all your keys, exactly what the key signatures are, what the relative keys, all that stuff, then the Circle of Fifths is the thing that tells you everything. There are shortcuts that people use to try and memorize the order of events, but this is the full picture. And so if you can score a full house on the quiz, you know you've got the knowledge that is really going to empower what you're doing musically. So I hope that quiz has gone well for you.